Imagine this for a moment. You find yourself in a relationship that swallows up nearly every part of you. On certain days, it feels like you have reached the very summit of passion. Everything is intense, alive, and electric. Then, without warning, it turns into the emotional equivalent of tiptoeing across a field of hidden mines. Words slice more sharply than silence ever could. Small, harmless gestures shift into full-blown arguments. Even asking for a little room to breathe gets twisted into something you should feel guilty about. Yet you remain. Not because it is convenient, not because you are weak, but because some voice deep inside whispers that this love must be worth the turmoil, that the constant storm must be the toll you pay for something extraordinary. Here is what often goes unnoticed. Toxic relationships rarely expose their true nature on day one. Layers build slowly. They open with affection, promises, and solid commitment, but almost invisibly affection mutates into control, care becomes surveillance, and connection turns into pure dependency. You do not spot the change at first. You just sense a growing feeling of debt, as though loving someone automatically requires you to shrink yourself. Maybe you have lived through this pattern already, or you have watched a friend get tangled in it. You hear them say, "He is like this because he loves me too much," or "She is just insecure. She doesn't mean any harm." Excuses that defend behaviors draining every ounce of their energy. These are those relationships where a simple wish for silence sparks guilt, where one firm no unleashes emotional blackmail, chilly distance, or sudden explosions. Then the most damaging part kicks in. You begin to question your own judgment. Am I blowing this out of proportion? Am I the real problem? That subtle self-doubt is one of the quietest and most dangerous signs of toxicity. It clouds how you see reality, slowly dismantles your self-confidence, and blurs the line between genuine love and sheer emotional survival. This discussion is not meant to accuse or shame anyone. Instead, it is an invitation to look honestly at the patterns we often label love that might, in truth, be poisoning our emotional health. Together, we will explore 7 psychological signals, grounded in the work of some of the sharpest minds in psychology, that show you may be stuck in a damaging bond. You will not hear empty catchphrases or shallow advice. What follows are unsettling yet freeing insights, because sometimes the first step out of a destructive loop is finally seeing what was hidden all along. If you are ready to face these truths with courage, keep watching. What you learn may sting, yet it can also unlock the doorway to freedom. The hardest relationships to abandon are frequently the most toxic. Why is that? Because, at first glance, they hand us something that feels rare and precious, intensity. Those heart-racing highs of emotional euphoria, passionate reunions after explosive disputes, or jealousy that masquerades as proof of deep care. Each upswing reinforces the illusion that something profound must be taking place. But intensity and love are not the same thing, and believing they are is dangerously misleading. Freud called this tendency the compulsion to repeat, our unconscious pull toward experiences that echo early childhood wounds. If you were raised where affection paired with pain, where stability was always threatened, your nervous system may have learned that love requires suffering, that it only seems real when it leaves you dizzy, unsure, or hurting. So when you meet someone who delivers emotional instability, you do not reject it. Your body recognizes it as familiar. Erich Fromm shone a light on a similar pattern when he spoke of symbiotic love, a bond where two people appear to merge into one, but are actually trapped in a dependency loop. In this setup, drama turns into routine, and without noticing, you start confusing emotional chaos with genuine depth. You convince yourself that if it hurts, it must mean it truly matters. Yet here lies the blunt reality. Intensity is not love, it is imbalance. Healthy partnerships typically feel steady and predictable, sometimes even dull to people hooked on adrenaline-fueled emotion. The brain actually releases dopamine in cycles of heightened tension followed by relief, building a chemical craving for conflict itself. Gradually, chaos feels normal. You start defining love as something that knocks you off center, that devours you whole. And that is the cruel twist. This emotional bond feels powerful because it delivers the illusion of depth. You imagine you have discovered someone who makes you feel in ways no one else ever has, when what awakens is an old pain inside that never healed. The more intense the bond, the tighter it becomes. Then another layer appears. You begin to believe you can rescue this person. You are certain that with enough devotion, the roller coaster will glide into smooth, gentle curves. As the warning signs pile up, emotional outbursts, sabotage, sudden withdrawals, something in you grows restless. An urgent desire to mend, to fix, to heal takes over, making the relationship less about connection and more about a mission. Without realizing it, you step into the role of rescuer. It is an emotional snare disguised as kindness. The inner reasoning sounds convincing. If I love enough, he will change. If I am patient, she will see how much she is hurting. If I endure a little longer, everything will be fine. The hidden truth is this story is not truly about the other person. It is about you. It is about an unhealed wound looking for meaning and worth by turning the partner into a mirror of your own shadow. Carl Jung described this in clear terms: projection. We see parts of ourselves we have not accepted in the other person. If you shove your own insecurity out of sight, you might gravitate towards someone timid and try to fortify them. If you repress anger, you could be drawn to someone volatile and attempt to calm their storms. In effect, you hope to heal yourself by fixing them. Fromm highlighted a related dynamic he named neurotic love, a love that is always conditional. I am only worthy if I am useful, if I am needed, if I am indispensable. This version of love can never flow freely. It must constantly be earned through personal sacrifice. So the cycle of frustration never ends. The harder you try to help, the more drained you feel. The more your partner resists, the more you double down. When nothing improves, you turn the blame inward, convinced you simply did not give enough. Here is the tough truth you might need to hear. You are not in a relationship. You are standing on an emotional battlefield, fighting ghosts that are not yours, trying to save someone who might not even want rescue. The longer you try to patch them up, the more you unravel yourself. Amid this struggle, something even more dangerous creeps in. Piece by piece, you begin to vanish. Your preferences, dreams, and boundaries blur until they almost disappear. Everything soon orbits around the other person. Suddenly, you find you cannot answer basic questions. What do you like? It depends. What do you want? It does not matter. What do you feel? You genuinely do not know anymore. When you are caught in a toxic relationship, this drift away from yourself does not strike all at once. It is slow, silent, and sneaky. It happens so quietly you barely notice, until one day you stare into the mirror and the face looking back feels like a stranger. That is one of the harshest effects of a damaging bond. Your sense of self starts to erode. Erich Fromm used the term symbiotic fusion to describe the moment two people stop existing as separate individuals and melt into one blurred emotional mass. In that kind of setup, everything circles around the other person. Their mood sets the tone of your whole day. Her emergencies dictate the choices you make. You begin trimming and reshaping your behavior to sidestep tension, rehearsing each sentence in your mind before you dare to speak. Little comforts disappear one after the next. Hobbies, favorite foods, long-standing friendships, until nothing left feels strictly yours. Here is where Freud's idea of ego repression plays out with full force. When pleasing the other person becomes a matter of emotional survival, you start pushing down your own urges. Anger gets swallowed. Discomfort is brushed aside. Wants and needs fall silent. After enough time, you turn into whatever the other demands you be. The disconnection seeps into the small things too. Your style shifts to match theirs. You drift from people who once mattered, and projects that once sparked excitement get shelved, all in the name of keeping things calm. In truth, you are slowly fading from your own life, trading your identity for the illusion of harmony, and that price is far too steep. The most dangerous part is that this loss does not arrive with loud pain. It shows up as dull emptiness, flat apathy, a nagging sense that something is off even when you cannot name it. When you finally try to take back a little space or set a simple boundary, guilt pounces. Wanting a quiet evening alone feels selfish, Blocking off personal time seems wrong. Uttering a firm no carries the weight of betrayal. That is exactly what needs unpacking next. How, inside toxic bonds, a basic wish for autonomy gets twisted into a moral crime and guilt turns into a lever of control. In a balanced partnership, room to breathe is normal. Silence is welcome. Solitude is honored. Boundaries are seen as pillars of a grown-up connection rather than signs of rejection. In a toxic setup, that natural need morphs into a forbidden act. The request for space is labeled an insult. Quiet stretches feel threatening. Personal freedom is framed as pure selfishness. From this poisoned ground springs guilt. You catch yourself feeling bad for sleeping alone, delaying a text reply, or grabbing coffee with friends without offering a minute-by-minute briefing. The very thought of putting yourself first triggers discomfort, as though self-respect were equivalent to betrayal. The trickiest detail is that this guilt is rarely shouted at you outright. Often it takes shape through knowing stares, prolonged silences, or lines like "you've changed, you don't care about me anymore." Or the classic, "if it were the other way around, I would never do this to you." Freud would call this the hand of the punitive superego, an inner critic that copies strict outside voices and scolds you whenever you look after your own well-being. In toxic pairings, the partner reinforces that inner critic daily. Over time, you anticipate the guilt before it lands. You censor yourself before voicing a preference, shelving your own wishes to dodge the emotional backlash you know will follow. It is as if you live under constant psychological surveillance, measuring every step to keep from setting off the other person's reaction. The impact is brutal. Deep breaths vanish, tension never truly leaves your shoulders, and you quit existing in an easy, natural way. Instead, you become an edited version of yourself, forever on call, ever agreeable, always braced for trouble. Behind this pattern lies a buried belief. Loving someone means erasing yourself. But what would happen if you stopped carrying responsibility for the other person's emotional weather? What if the blame you shoulder is not really yours at all? That question ushers in the next layer of the trap. The moment you start thinking you are duty-bound to manage your partner's suffering, that you cannot walk away because the pain they feel would be unbearable. Maybe you have pictured ending things. You have rehearsed goodbye speeches in your head. You have imagined rebuilding life on your own terms. But something stronger than loneliness and heavier than guilt pins you in place: the other person's distress. Their hurt becomes an invisible chain. This is more than empathy, it is a warped sense of obligation that treats their wounds as if they were yours. You tell yourself, "I can't abandon them now. They're going through so much. They only act this way because they have suffered a lot." Gradually, the role of partner slides into caretaker. Whenever they show fragility or threaten to fall apart, your need to feel essential tightens. An illusion forms that your presence alone props up their entire world, and leaving would be cruelty. But is that truly love? Or is it emotional captivity wearing the mask of compassion? Carl Jung explained this through the pull of unconscious archetypes, most notably the martyr. When you cling to another's pain until you disappear, you are living out a story where the savior sacrifices everything in a quest to heal the wounded other, even if that journey ruins the savior in the process. Erich Fromm labeled this a strain of neurotic love, a tie kept alive not by free choice but by fear, need, and raw dependency. You remain not because you genuinely wish to, but because you feel compelled to. In this way, the partner's suffering, even when not deliberate, turns into a subtle form of control. Each tear, outburst, or collapse tightens your sense of duty to stay. The harsh reality is that you are not responsible for mending pain the other refuses to confront. Your presence alone cannot save someone. Often it only delays a collapse that both of you will suffer. And here lies the cruelest twist. While you grip so tightly to the other's agony, something oddly familiar hides within this dynamic. That strange sense of déjà vu creeps in again and again. The feeling that you have been here before, even when the faces are new. Each time the bond turns turbulent, you can almost hear echoes from long-gone rooms, familiar patterns that took root years ago. It is this odd familiarity that makes the relationship feel uncannily right, even though logic tells you it is anything but healthy. You reassure yourself that you no longer wish to hurt, yet somehow you keep stepping into the very storyline you swore you would never repeat. The scene changes, the actors rotate, yet the script stays word for word the same. You insist that next time will be different, reminding yourself you now recognize all the red flags. Still, the plot rolls forward exactly as before. The same sharp absences, the same quiet treatments that shout louder than any fight, the same lingering ache. It is not bad luck, it is a pattern, and Freud gave that pattern a clear title: compulsion to repeat. In the language of psychoanalysis, this is the mind's hidden drive to seek out and relive unfinished childhood pain. Not because you enjoy the suffering, but because the psyche is desperate to direct the old scene toward a brand new ending. Maybe you grew up surrounded by mixed signals, rejection, or constant uncertainty. As an adult, you can feel an invisible pull toward partners who hand you more of that same chaos. The unconscious promise whispers that this time it will be different, this time you will be loved, this time you will not be abandoned. The logic is silent but strong. If the story repeats yet finally turns out well, the wound will close at last. Freud also talked about transference, the habit of moving old emotions from parents or early caretakers onto people in the present. That is why someone who keeps their feelings locked away can feel oddly magnetic. It is not true attraction to unavailability, it is the old emotional memory turning on like a light switch. A younger part inside you argues that if you win love from this distant person now, then the earlier hurt will finally disappear. Reality rarely obeys. Most of the time, the more you fight to alter the script, the more you sink into it, because you are not engaging with what is happening today. You are wrestling yesterday with tools that failed you before. While you try to rescue the child who lives in your memories, the present-day adult starts to fade, growing worn and brittle under the weight. Then comes the grimmest twist. Pain starts to feel normal. Discomfort blends into the very idea of love. Calm, reliable connections seem dull because they do not set off your inner alarms. Toxic chaos turns into the comfort zone you know best, even when you recognize the circle for what it is. Even when you can describe every destructive beat, you hesitate to break away. Why? Because something looms that feels even scarier than pain, the hollow space where you are no longer sure who you would be without it. Have you daydreamed about walking out? Have you pictured life where your mornings open with quiet instead of tension, where you can speak your mind without hearing the floor crack? You may catch glimpses of ease, of steady breathing, of simply being you. Yet right on the heels of that hope arrives a chill, an emptiness, and the whisper of three relentless questions. What if I am nothing without him? What if I never find someone again? What if this suffering is all that's left for me? That fear is heavy, and it grips harder than love ever did. Often the terror has little to do with the person beside you and everything to do with the thin, frayed thread binding you to your own self. Jung noted this fragile state when he spoke about an undeveloped ego, about a life where individuation never fully took place. If your identity has fused with the relationship, leaving it can feel like dissolving into shapeless mist, as though your partner's eyes are the only mirror verifying you exist. Without that reflection, who remains? Fromm added a sharp observation: many people chase love not out of freedom, but as an escape route. Escape from the dread of standing alone. Escape from facing the questions that grow loud in silence. Escape from meeting the unfiltered self. In that sense, such love is not a conscious selection. It is more like anesthesia. You stay even as it tears you apart because the void seems colder than the pain you know. The mind convinces itself that familiar agony is safer than the blank slate of starting over. That is not cowardice. It is an echo of an old injury, the injury of never learning how to feel complete while standing solo. No one may have shown you how to sit with yourself without slipping away, how to honor personal limits without immediately apologizing, how to hold self-love without needing another heartbeat to keep it alive. Yet the plain truth remains. You can only share a real, nourishing love once you stop trading pieces of yourself to keep someone close. A partnership is not meant to crush you or scatter you. It should widen the outline of who you already are. If that expansion is missing, perhaps the question is no longer what is wrong with me, but why do I still give this the name love? You deserve better. But before you hunt for that better outside, courage is not walking away without tears. Courage is holding steady to your own shape, even while outside voices try to bend you. Now let's hear from you. Which moment in these reflections hit you the hardest? Which line uncovered something that had been hiding in plain sight? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Putting your experience into words can be the very first crack in the old cycle, and if this video just gave you a flash of clarity, do not pause here. The next video digs even deeper, maybe deeper than anything we have covered today. It offers another piece of the puzzle. Your journey toward freedom is only just beginning.